We have Ed Giansante, who is the head of community at Persona, previously global head of community at, let me get these out, Dropbox, Wix, Zynga, VMware, you may have heard of these, and founder of Edublin, an expat community. Born in Sao Paulo in Brazil, Edu moved to Ireland in '08, where he started Edublin and is currently in San Francisco. His ability to share useful information in video storytelling has brought him, hold on, over 400,000 YouTube subscribers and over 50 million views. Okay. He's someone you're going to want to hit up if you want to get seen, is all I'm saying. In 2020, Ed was selected the Online Community Professional of the Year by CMX. In 21, he joined Wix, and he's joined several nonprofit mentorship programs and become an angel investor over time. Without further ado, it is Edu. Tell us about the borrowed community strategy in this talk sponsored by Gradual.
Thanks, Victoria. Thank you so much. Thanks all. Great to be here. I'm actually now in Panama, and there's no way when I say Panama, I cannot think of the Van Halen song, Panama, which is great. It's a great song. Anyway, so I'm here because I'm flying to Brazil. But let me go and back here to see your faces, and I can see the chat. That's great. Can you all see my screen? You can see my screen. And let me know if it gets noisy. I actually brought the mic with me so that this way I don't get stuck for like a lot of noise. Cool. So who here has had a little bit of a slackony of seeing all of these channels popping all the time? You can use the chat to raise your hand. It's like, oh God, who actually is part of like maybe 5 or more spaces on Slack today? Because this is actually a screenshot of mine. It looks crazy. It's a lot of them. And there's a saying that every time a new Slack space is created to start a new community, a dolphin gets hit by a jet ski in Thailand. True story. And before we move into that, and I have to say, I have a lot of Slack channels that I created myself, so I blame myself on this. As Victoria shared, you probably have seen some of these logos here, and I think these logos are very known to, I'd say, if not all, but most of you. Can you recognize them all? Feel free to use the chat because then I can see what's going on there. Yeah. Now, these logos have one thing in common. They have an unfair advantage because it's almost like a credential. When you have them, people kind of gravitate towards you, right? And that means, oh, thanks, Victoria, for sharing that. So people can gravitate towards you. So when you have this credential, that means that, hey, I'm leading this community at X company that everyone knows about. When I say X, you think it's Twitter, but it's X as in an example. And it's almost like an easy way in because people will gravitate towards you. They will invite you to places. You have this credential. What if I share these credentials here? Maybe for us, it's very known, right? Do you recognize these 3 brands here? I hope you do. At least one of them. Come on. So there's an unfair advantage when you have a very recognizable brand as opposed to have a brand that's yet to be built or is being built. When you look at my background, I had an unfair advantage when I was building communities for the last few years because I worked for companies that have very known logos: Zynga, Dropbox, VMware, Wix, and whatnot. And on top of that, I also had Edublin. But now I'm working with Persona, and Persona, I can tell maybe 90% of you, if not more, don't know what we do. And I had no idea what we did. I still suffer to explain this in details because it's complex, and that means that I have 3 challenges that I have to face. And please let me know in the chat. I'll make sure to go back to the chat afterwards. And Victoria's making sure she's keeping me like on the loop here. But let me know if this resonates with you. You have no recognizable brand in the company you work for. Maybe because it's your business, you're just getting started. Maybe because it's a new startup. I'm back to the brand. I hope this was the part we're in. If not, you let me know in the chat. When I was talking about brand, I was referring to like what does brand mean, and this explanation from Seth Godin is actually pretty good because it resonates a lot to what I feel we do with communities in how we build back. We think about expectations, memories, stories, and relationships, and that's very close to what we do with communities. And when we go back into these brands that you're looking at now, you think about, okay, what do they mean? Like, what brand is that? What set of expectations do I have around these brands? For those of you who don't know yet, we have here, led by Francisco's brand, we have Persona and we have Fever. It may be known to us, but then if I ask, to my mom, what does this Fever logo mean? She will have no idea because her expectations are not there, right? She's not the right profile to actually see this brand and recognize it. And that brings me to my first point, the ICP. If you're not familiar with the term ICP, this is a very boring way of explaining this, but it's the ideal customer profile. It's a set of attributes that you create to define who's going to be your buyer, right, for your product. And you may have your buyer for products you offer today, a buyer for the actually company you work for. If you want to give an exercise and actually type in the chat, who do you feel led by Francisco's brand? Who's the ICP for that brand? Who do you feel is the consumer, the buyer of that brand? Feel free to live in the chat. You can actually pick like a sponsor as well and live in the chat. When you think about ICPs, it's very much related to the product, the buyer. But when I talk about communities, you have the ICCP, or the ideal community customer profile. And that can be more than just your eventual ICP. It can be a subset of that ICP, but it can also be the ecosystem. And let me bring you an example, like an actual example of what we're doing here today, because I feel this is going to resonate better. When we talk about led by community, most of the ICP would be community managers, community builders, people who are in the community space. They're like doing the work. But I'm pretty sure that Jerry, CEO of Gradual, which is the actual platform you're using this, he might be hanging around. He might be here actually. I mean, if he's send a hello, but he might be actually part of Francisco's community. He might be on that Slack channel. And the reason why is not because he's a community manager. He's part of the ecosystem. There's a vested interest for him to be part of that, to be known in that space. And that happens in a lot of cases, right? You may have Clara for Talkbase. You may have someone from sales at Chorus. You may have different people who are not necessarily community managers, but they are spending time in this community. And again, they're the ecosystem, right? So that's when we start to think about the ICCP. Do any of you have best practices on how you identify your ICCP for your own community? Feel free to type in like, okay, this is what I feel is my ICP, my ICCP for my community, and my best practices to identify them. Would like to know that. I'll keep chatting. I'll check on your chat afterwards. I'll probably spend like a good time checking all the chat afterwards. So there are a few things you can do, and I'll share a little bit of what I do with Persona. In a very, very summarized and simplified way, Persona is an identity management platform. What that means is, let's say that you want to ride an Uber, you want to get an Uber driver, and that driver needs to be verified. So you know that they're legit, they're like, an actual person with a driver's license. They have to verify their driver's license. They have to verify that they're like who they say they are. And to do that verification, there's a system that runs in between Uber and that person. And that's what Persona does. So we're really specific. And people usually don't even see us because there's no branding, nothing around it. So very specific. And they're like, oh, yeah, who's the ICP at Persona? Usually, chief compliance officer, head of compliance. It can be someone who leads fraud in companies. It can be product managers implementing the solutions, or founders, people who are building businesses that will require trust and safety. So you have like maybe a marketplace, maybe you have like a dating app, maybe you have a fintech. And these are founders that we'll be seeing as like ICP. When I look at that, I'm like, okay, for my community, who can I touch base with? I had no idea compliance, officers would do, or like I was like, that's highly complex. I had no idea. This sounds boring to me, so I'll probably stick to the one that I know a little bit more, which is founders, because I have created my own business. So maybe there's something here I can resonate with that. So that was how I started my identification of like, can I brand myself around that group? Then you go into the second challenge, right? Which is I don't have money, so what can I do? So usually, I mean, and you told us that, right? This is a research that was done, I think 2021 or 22. This one was specifically, maybe it was Counselor who did that. And it shows that cash, resources, and all of that seems to be an issue for most of you. And a lot of this is a research of like a lot of community managers. But to be very honest, to do all of the work that I'm doing with Persona, I'm using these three main tools: LinkedIn, myself, and email. And it's crazy how strong this can be and how powerful, because once you figure this out and create like processes in how you deliver them and work with them, then you can think about the tools as enhancements. So tools can come in on top of all of that and help you move this to the next level. And you can obviously get into like AI, and that goes into another level, but it can go even further. And that becomes what we see today, right? There's all of this going on. And then you're like, oh my God, which platform do I go for? Which one is the right one? Um, I usually start with the very basics. I start with email, sometimes phone, literally phone, and LinkedIn. That's what I do. And everything else is just an enhancement to what I do, because it doesn't matter if you have like this shiny, beautiful car with a beautiful dashboard if you don't even know how to drive, or you don't even know where to go, because you're going to sit in that car and be like, okay, where do we go now? You're going to be going around the block. I'm going to burn all that petrol doing that and not get anywhere. So it's not about the tool, it's really where you want to go. And does that tool help you enhance that or get there faster, get there with more efficiency, right? Third point, because I know we're like getting to semifinals here. I lost a little bit of time from you being disconnected. No community. We're like, oh, I don't have a community. And I kind of want to ask this question to you all. Do you feel you have a community now? Like I have a community. I'm owning a community. Do you feel you joined one more than actually created or enabled one? Let me know a little bit in the chat. Cool. Um, so to me, I felt like when I was working for companies like Dropbox, Zynga, there was a community. My job as a community manager was almost like figuring out where they were and doing something around that and building something around them to help them be better, be faster, make more money, whatever it is around that. It was very different. It wasn't like what I get at Persona. Because if I try and look around, I'm like, I don't even know if people know what we do. They don't even know our brand, as I mentioned. I don't have cash to sponsor things. I don't have a way to actually get in. I don't know the compliance people. They sound too serious to me. They wear a suit. I don't know what to do. So it's hard. It's really hard. I don't know. It's like how can I get something going, right? And that's when I start to think about creating motion or creating a community that's borrowed from someone else. And that's very interesting because it may sound weird. I don't think that's how people build communities nowadays. They try to build their own thing and centralize around their own brand. And I'm trying to do it differently. May not be the right way, but I'm going to share what I do. To me, to start a community, I have to find people, right? I have to find, okay, do I don't want to make a community of AI. I want to make a community of humans. So people first. I want to find, okay, where are the people? Where are these founders that I saw as like a potential ICCP for me? Where are they? Second, I have customers. Okay, customers could potentially be part of my community. Not sure for them all, but maybe a cohort could be part of that. Again, as I mentioned, maybe a product manager within that company. I don't know. And third, I have prospects because they're probably interested in us. Maybe they are our ICP, but they're not yet a customer. So maybe they're interesting for us. Maybe I want to have them around. I want to have them in our community. So these are the three ways I identify like how I want to start finding my community. So how do I get there, right? First, for the people, I want to meet them in person. I want to make sure that I show up and be visible to them so that we can start that connection, make that happen. And I'll share what I do to actually get there. I know that you are all over the globe. I imagine that like maybe several countries. I don't know if you all shared this before, but feel free to ping like if you're in different parts of the world. I'm currently in Panama, but I usually live in San Francisco, and it's quite easy to find events there. I would imagine that if you do some search like Eventbrite, Meetup.com, Luma, whatever, you'll find a ton of them. Um, Maybe not as much as you find in San Francisco because that's like a bit too much even, but there are events everywhere. And if there isn't, that's an opportunity for you because you can create one. You can create ways to connect with people. What I did was exactly that. I started to create events to meet with founders. I was like, founders meet up SF, show up. And people start to show up. And it's crazy because I was like, I can't believe like there's so many events going on, and yet they show up to my event. Crazy. It started with like 5 and then 10, 20, 30, 35. Now it's about 35, 40 people who show up. And it's insane because every meeting, every time we're doing this meetup, which lasts about 2 hours, it's a new 30 people that I'm getting into my network that I get to know who could potentially become members of my community. Not all of them will become members, but it's like a way for me to connect with them. Then you're like, okay, but how are they showing up? I'll tell you, it's so hard, but so easy. You just need to invite them, right? You create something and invite them. Usually, if you invite 3 people, one will RSVP, and then if you charge them maybe like $5, $10, they'll show up. It's crazy. I didn't know it was like that straightforward, but it's happening. Then you're like, okay, so people are showing up. You're meeting with like new members. How do you then connect with your customers? Pretty simple. Calendly, and Calendly is simple because people just pick the time themselves. You don't need to send like options, and they have to like go back to you and like all this back and forth by email. You send them a link, they'll pick it up, and then that's it. Quick tip is I do 15 minutes. I don't do 30 minutes because that's a lot of time. Sometimes I even put down a 5 minute slot just to say hi, because all I want to do is create that one report. Like, hey, how's it going? My name is Ed, and tell me a little bit about yourself. And you just create that initial report. Maybe they want to spend more time, and you can put more time in the future for them to connect with you. And that's happening. I'm meeting with them all a lot of times. It's again building up on that. And you're like, oh, by the way, I'm creating this small group here of people because I feel like there are ways we can help you get better at what you do, or help you with this and this and that. Or what do you feel is a pain point today that you have, and can I help you with that? So that's usually how you can get started with the meetups and this Calendly invites for them. And then third is showing up elsewhere, showing up where other communities are doing work that may have potential customers for you or potential ICCPs for you. And in that, actually, I have to say, I have done a lot of really cool things. The simple ones were like joining like subreddits, right? This is pretty straightforward. You just go in, you can do that today if you want. You can actually join other communities where you feel your ICCP could be hanging in. So I'll give you an example. There's a community called Everything Marketplaces, and I asked, hey, can I give a talk and talk about communities in marketplaces? And they're like, sure, because most people here are just talking about accountants and talking about I don't know, how do I sell more or whatever. But community is a great talk. No one is talking about that. Feel free to come over. And I did, and I spoke about community building in marketplaces. And what I did at the end, I was like, oh, by the way, I'm working at Persona, and we actually offer ways for you to build a trustworthy community for your marketplaces. Because when you actually want to deal with someone online and selling and buying, you want to avoid scam. So here we have a free version of our product. Feel free to join us and whatnot. Boom, that's it. You start to show up there. I co-hosted an event with Ivana, who was here, I think, yesterday, talking as well with you all. It was great because Ivana was like, I have this, group of product managers. We want to do something. I don't have a venue. Maybe we can collaborate. I was like, I have something here. I have a venue. I can offer you the venue. And can I get like a 5 minute slot to talk about Persona? Sure. Boom. We made it. And it was great, actually. And I recommend, if you're not doing it yet, like to co-host some of these activities with fellow brands. So that's when we start to talk about like the community for equity. So I have something that I can offer in exchange of what you can offer me, and we start to build up on that, and that's great. So by the way, if any of you want to do an event in San Francisco, I have a space. So talk to me. And this is how it starts to grow, right? But the thing is, it's never going to be easy for you to find out, okay, what can I do? What should I do? If you don't know what you're looking for. And I love this quote. I don't know if this is like someone's quote, but I had a version of that quote that I learned in Portuguese initially. And then I was like, I'll just translate that and share with you all. But it feels like this is very common, where if you don't know what you're looking for, it's going to be really, really hard for you to get into anything. All right. Now, before we wrap, I actually want to share like a very quick story, and I hope it resonates. But it's about Benjamin Zander. He actually is a conductor of an orchestra, and I think it's a Boston orchestra, and he wrote a book that's called The Art of Possibility. And in a very summarized version, essentially what he's saying is, usually conductors, when they're talking about classical music, they get really upset when they say the classical music is dying. Only 4%, only 3% of people love classical music. It's slowly fading. People are not getting back to it. Um, if you only could do like maybe 4%, maybe more people would like it. I don't know. And you start to feel pretty negative. It's like a down spiral. It starts with negativity, and then you're like, I don't know, I don't know. But then what he says is, what if everybody loves classical music? They just don't know about it yet. And I love this version of how he approaches things, because it changes how you see things, how you think about things. And I started to think like that. I was like, what if every founder loves Persona? They just don't know about it yet. It just changes like how I approach things. And I think about like this as like a mission. And through that mission, I started to build what we call like a startup program, which is almost like building communities around the product. So we changed completely how we offer the product at Persona, which was initially like this like free version of our product, to be now like it's a cohort, it's a community you're going to join, and on top of that, you're going to be able to use our product for free. So it's changing things around, which is great. But that was only possible because of everything else that happened before, starting with like no money, no brand, and no community, but figuring out how to build that. And we have like podcasts, we have meetups happening now, we have more things going on. We have an academy to teach people, and I'm super happy that this is how this is unfolding, because it brings me to my last quote before I wrap, which is, in the measurement world, we usually set goals and then we strive for it. So there's a goal, let's go for it. But then in the universe of possibility, you set a context and you let it unfold. And I love that. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time. And I'll check if there are questions, and maybe like 1 minute or so, but I can get back to you on LinkedIn and whatnot.
Thank you, Ed. That was fabulous. Love the quotes. Love the reframe. Okay, transformational coaching out here. Love that. We do have some questions in the chat, but I'll hit you with one that we have time for. It might be a dual question, but how do you measure your own success when it comes to hosting events for Edublin? And actually, how did you and how has that changed?
Oh, for Edublin specifically, well, Edublin is a very different community. It's a community of expats. So
Yeah.
to me, it was more like, am I getting people to feel they're helping, they're learning something new? Are they, what action are they taking on that? So kind of like I'll wrap this around both Persona and Meetup and Edublin with this meetups, which is, what's the intention behind them? For Persona, my intention was, I want to be known, I want to be friends with the ecosystem, I want to find out whether there is an ICCP there. And what I usually measure is, are people coming back to me? Are they resonating to what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Are they feeling like, hey, I want to be more involved in this? And for Dublin, it's more about like, are they building things themselves? Are they being successful living abroad?
Okay. Yeah. Glorious. Thank you so much for that. There are some questions in the chat. You'll have to go find those over there after
I
this.
will chase them all.
Chase them all. And thank you so much for your time and energy and for dealing so gracefully with the tech woes. So really appreciate that. Being great on the edge of our seats, on the tip of our toes. Okay.